Hi guys, and welcome back to Caterpillar Cross Stitch. In today's video I'm going to be showing you the exact process that I use when designing a brand new cross stitch pattern of choosing the exact DMC thread or floss colours that will be in that cross stitch kit that you receive. I hope you enjoy it, and if you like videos like this, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I upload brand new cross stitch related videos every single week. So as you can see here, I've got all kinds of different fabrics. These are all by Zweigart, which are the fabrics that we use in all of our cross stitch kits. But there's different thread counts, different types of fabric from Ada to even weave, and obviously different shades of fabric, which I do use in different kits. You can see here some of the different thread colours that have been placed against them and how they will all work when finally stitched up. So let's get into the video and see exactly how I narrow down the colours to use. So the first pattern I'm going to talk you through is Seize the Day, which is a stitch along from 2019 but is now available as a full kit. The first thing I try and think about when looking for the exact colours to use is what's the theme of the overall pattern. So for Seize the Day, it was a seaside beach themed. So of course I knew there was going to be some kind of a sandy colour, something for the sun, something for the sea and the sky, and then thinking about what other elements did I want within the pattern. So I knew there was going to be a crab, for example, so I knew I needed orange, and I will narrow it down into the kind of colour families. Sometimes with particular patterns, the exact colours will be dictated by a particular element within that. So for example, within this one there's seaweed, so I knew I needed a kind of an aqua colour that definitely had to be in there. Sometimes there'll be one lead colour, so here you can see that there's the yellows and the blues, and everything else will kind of be incorporated around that. The first thing I'll do is segment them into different sections according to their colour families. So any particular dark colours together, like black, grey, brown, the yellows, the blues, and then here there's quite a selection of pinks and oranges. I'll then go through and substitute some for others depending on whether or not I want them slightly brighter, paler, or a different tone. I need to also make sure that they all work well together. So with so many different elements within Seize the Day, pretty much every single colour that you can see here will be stitched against one of the other colours because it was quite a large pattern, Seize the Day. Sometimes I might want to use colours, so you can see the pinks here, which are very similar really, but just graduated in their shade and tone. And other times I'll want the colours used to be really quite contrasting, depending on the element within the pattern. So we have a mermaid for this one, there's bubbles, like I say, seaweed. There was also a treasure chest, so I knew I needed gold and black. And we also had the sand and waves, clouds, kites, stuff like that. So the colours as well needed to be used interchangeably and mixed around, but most importantly to make sure that they work well together, they represent accurately the overall theme and the art that I'm trying to display, but also work really well against the backing fabric. So it will depend on the theme, but sometimes it will be against white and I'll make sure all of the colours are quite bright. But sometimes, as you'll see a bit later on, if the fabric is coloured, it will definitely change my decision on which colours to use. Sometimes I don't mind too much if the colours are not an exact representation of the element that we are stitching. Because after all, it is artwork, it doesn't have to be an exact representation, as in some kind of factual book, but I do like to keep them relatively accurate, but then there's some sort of wiggle room depending on whether or not I think a shade works better. And for some patterns, if I used the exact shades and exact colours that were in all of the elements, we'd probably end up with over 50 colours and it would be a complete nightmare. So I do try and narrow it down. Generally for each cross stitch kit, I use between 13 and 16 different shades, which is plenty. And bear in mind, every single one of the thread holders is made completely by hand. Generally for my cross stitch kits, I tend to use between 13 and 16 different DMC shades of thread, which I think works really, really well. It's not too many to source if you are choosing a PDF pattern only and you're buying all of your threads, because we don't want it to be really complicated. But around that kind of number of threads, it gives us a really nice range to choose from and to make the pattern really stand out. Of course, Watercolour Alphabet, the cross stitch kit, does have 24 different colours, which is a bit crazy. That is quite a large pattern, and because it's a watercolour effect, it kind of needs all of those graduations of different colour to give it that depth. But generally, we're sticking to around 13 to 16 colours. So I'll choose all the families, choose the main shades that I need, narrow it down into maybe 2 or 3 shades of each colour family, check that they all work together nicely, and check them against the fabric. So for this one, Seize the Day, it was a pale sandy kind of colour, represent the sand on the beach obviously, and check that they all work nicely and stand out against that sandy fabric. So the next pattern I wanted to talk to you about was Hello Pumpkin, which again was a stitch along from 2019. It was an autumn Halloween kind of a themed pattern. So I definitely wanted to be using oranges, browns, purples and golds in here, really to bring out and represent all of the beautiful colours of autumn. And the cross stitch pattern itself was in fact a tree, so I already knew the kind of things I needed in there, the leaves and stuff like that. So I knew there was definitely going to be a toadstool, so I definitely needed an orangey red, white and at least 2 shades of brown. It's kind of a long procedure, and this process does take me quite a while when I'm sitting here first kind of planning out a brand new cross stitch kit. But again, you can see here that I'm putting all of the colours into their families, the darkest ones, the orangey, reds, blues and golds. Now, at the stage I'm at kind of 4 years in of designing cross stitch patterns, I know quite a few of the numbers off by heart, so I will be able to look at something and think, hang on a minute, I want an orange but it's too much of a bright orange, or it's too much of a red orange. And within the DMC colour range, there are hundreds and hundreds of different colour threads to choose from. So if you think something is slightly too gold, or it's too bright yellow, or whatever it might be, there is always another colour that you can choose. I'll also link down below in the description box the DMC thread card, which is this gorgeous folder that contains a tiny, tiny swatch of every single thread that DMC make. This is a really handy tool for when you might not necessarily have that colour in your stash, but you want to just double check, you know, if there is a different shade available, or whether or not it goes with another colour that you're using. They're only kind of 2 centimetres wide, these little swatches of thread, but it's a really, really handy tool, and it's pretty stunning to look at too. I'll also check with the thread colour palettes whether or not the colours are too similar, because there's no point having 4 golds, for example, that all really at a distance look very much alike, in my opinion anyway. I like to have them with quite a bit of a difference, just so that they really stand out in the pattern itself. They add a bit more texture and depth to it, build out that pattern, and also it's easier when you're stitching because you can kind of see at a glance which colour thread it is. So whether it's on the thread holder, which is numbered of course, but you might take them off there and be using them. People have told me that it is really, really tricky if you're using a cross stitch kit or pattern that has sort of over 20 or 30 different shades, and there might be 6 blues and you're constantly getting confused over which blue you're meant to use. This way you pretty much know which one you need to be using. It's easily identifiable when you go to look in your stash. The next cross stitch kit I wanted to talk to you about was Deck the Halls, which is one of my favourite cross stitch patterns I've ever designed. This fabric, this was for Christmas, and this fabric is a really pale grey, again by Zweigart, so you can see this here on the right hand side. And in this pattern I knew there was going to be a snowman for sure. So, oh, also a gingerbread man, which is the needle minder. I'll link all the needle minders down below if you're interested in those. There's also a video I made all about how they are produced and the design and how they work and everything. So go and check that out if you're interested in needle minders. But here you can see I've gone for the white and the black and the brown, definitely. White for the snowman, black for the eyes and mouth, I think, and the brown, of course, for the gingerbread man. Also with this one, I went slightly rogue because, as I've just been saying for this whole video, I like to use a range of colours, but I kind of knew in my head when I was thinking about Deck the Halls, I knew I wanted it to be fundamentally green. Normally there's a whole range, but I knew I wanted that to be the lead colour. So where normally I might only use 3 different shades of one colour, or even 2, for this one there's quite a few. albeit I think the greens are quite different. You've got a lime green here, you've got a really rich Christmassy grass green. The 958 is used in 12 Days of Stitchmas, and it's used in a couple of other cross stitch patterns of mine as well. I really, really love that one. And then the other two greens, I just think complement them really well. They are different enough, and of course I check them all against each other. And it wouldn't be a Christmas pattern without using some kind of a red. I didn't want to use 666, which is a bright Christmassy red necessarily. I wanted it to be slightly more orange, so I went for 606. And also I do think that pink works beautifully with a turquoisey aqua green. So I do tend to put pinks and greens together quite a lot. But definitely for this one, wanted it to be mainly green and mainly pink. Of course, with the essentials of the black and white as well. But that would have been a little bit boring, so did add in the blue as well. I checked all of them together, checked all of them against the fabric as well, and always I make sure that they are test stitched, that every single colour is stitched actually on the fabric itself, so that I can make sure that they stand out once it's been stitched, that you can see your work at a distance once it's displayed on the wall or whatever you might want to do with it. And I always make sure that all of the threads are test stitched, the pattern is test stitched, so that I can see every single thread colour that has been cross stitched on that exact shade of fabric to make sure that it stands out enough. The next pattern I want to talk to you about is the home cross stitch pattern. Now this isn't available via my website caterpillarcrossstitch.com. This is actually a collaboration with the Historical Sampler Company's monthly subscription service, which is Cotton and Twine. This is a design that I created for them for their February 2020 box, which I've actually received, and it's awesome, by the way. There's loads of other goodies in there. So I knew with this home pattern, I wanted it to be modern, but also have some more muted, paler tones in there, slightly more traditional, but with a bit of a modern twist. The pattern itself is of a wreath style. I'll put a link in the description box below. And also you can see plenty of images of this exact design over on our Instagram feed, which is at Caterpillar Cross Stitch. But the wreath itself is not a traditional shape. There is geometric design to it. So I wanted it to stand out. Here you can see against the black. So there is this sort of this paler peachy tone against the black. I wanted there to be, again, you can see here the pinks and the greens and the blues are coming into it as well. But I've gone for, I believe, 524, which is more of a ferny green to go with the pinks. And then you've got a bright, a really rich deep blue here with the paler blue. And I also like to think, even if you removed all of the other colours and you were only using 4 or 5 of these thread colours in a palette, would they work together well on their own? Sometimes I get inspiration from art, from anything I see on TV, from books, anything on Pinterest, on Instagram, anything out in the wild, nature, it could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's like a poster or something, or it could be a curtain design, or anything really that I might see out in the shops. And although it won't be the exact pattern, sometimes I'll look and think, actually that colour works well together, or you know, if I'd have swapped here 524 for something a bit more of a Christmassy green, it would have given it a completely different vibe. But I'll compare all of the different oranges and reds and pinks here and make sure I've got a selection of brighter tones and more muted ones, which I think complement each other well. I did want this pattern to be softer overall, and something that you can hang in your home all year round. I love 3607. I've used this in quite a few of my patterns. I call it purple and everyone's like, no, it's pink. I think the official name is plum of some description, but I love 3607, especially with that green you can see there and the deeper blue. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. I hope it gave you a bit more of an insight into my design process. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you've enjoyed it, please do give the video a thumbs up and leave me a note in the comments below. Let me know what other kind of videos you would like to see me create next. And If you haven't already, please do click subscribe. I would absolutely love to have you join this community. And if you haven't yet, please do click the link in the description box below. Go over and sign up for our email newsletter. It's the VIP Stitch Club. It's absolutely free to join, and you will automatically receive 10% off your first ever order and a free ebook of 5 cross-stitch patterns that you can download and get going on instantly. There's a whole range of patterns within there to see you stitching throughout the year. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye.